Welcome to this information session and Q&A on the Nancy M. Marsiglia Institute of Justice. We're so thrilled to have you here. As you probably know, this is a 12-week course on the U.S. Constitution that is presented by Loyola University New Orleans College of Law and United Way of Southeast Louisiana. So thank you for joining us here tonight, and a special thank you to Women United for hosting this information session. Run through our agenda and housekeeping real quick. So we'll start off with some key application dates and class information. Then we'll move into a history and mission of the Marsiglia Institute to just give you an idea of how this course was started and why it's so important to all of us. Then we'll have a panel discussion with some distinguished fellows and graduates of the Institute and also our course instructor, and then an open Q&A. So as far as housekeeping, as I mentioned, this is being recorded, so if you have to jump off or anything, this will be shared with you afterwards. And then feel free to drop your questions in the chat at any time. We'll have that Q&A at the end, but we can also answer questions as we go along. So with that, here is kind of the key information as far as the application process for the fall 22 cohort, which is what we're recruiting for right now. So applications are due by July 31st, and you can submit those online at unitedwaysela.org/Marsiglia Institute. This year, classes will be hosted both in person and virtually. So if you're outside of the New Orleans area, or if you just have trouble getting to class, you can also have that option to participate virtually. And then classes meet Thursday evenings right at this time from 6 to 8 p.m. In-person classes meet at Loyola at the law school, and those begin on September 8th. And we also have partial scholarships available. So that's kind of the highlights of the nuts and bolts. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Charmaine Cassiope, who is the Executive Vice President and COO of United Way of Southeast Louisiana.
Well, thank you so much, Mary, and thank you to each and everyone who are joining with us tonight. I cannot encourage you enough to really seriously consider to be part of the Nancy Marsiglia Institute of Justice. I'm honored to tell you that this incredible opportunity that was given us to partner at the United Way of Southeast Louisiana with the Loyola College of Law started a good while ago when Mr. Khan was attending the actual Democratic National Convention, and he whipped out his Constitution book, and he said that, do you know your Constitution? Do you know your Constitution? I guess what was so incredibly powerful when he got up and he spoke was the words that said, remember, liberty and equal justice. We should respect each other, whatever our beliefs are. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. This actually was an opportunity for those of us who were watching, as we usually do, the activities of a national convention, whether it's Democrat or Republican, but that made a profound impression on one of our very dear friends and someone who's an incredible volunteer at the United Way of Southeast Louisiana, Madeline Shank. The one and only Madeline Shank said, this has given me reason to think, while we all have learned about the Constitution, it's important for us, I think, to gather. And she knew at that time what many of us did not know, that the remarkable Martha Palmer had been teaching the Constitution and had been literally engaged in bringing students together in competition that was fierce nationally. Well, she reached out to Martha, and they decided, Madeline Shank said, if I host this at my home and I bring women together, would you be willing to teach the Constitution? And sure enough, Martha said absolutely. And I can honestly say, in the spirit of only Madeline Shank, within 48 hours, she had a litany of 12 women ready to sit around and actually begin this 12-week course. It was exciting, it was exhilarating, But I think what we all learned was how critically important it was to not only study the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, but what it meant for us to be able to understand that this is how, if we're really serious, we were going to, at a very difficult time in our history, really regain civil discourse. And so I have to tell you, Madeline gave birth to that program in her home, but I have to say that this was a great opportunity for us to then approach none other than Madeline Landrieu at the Loyola College of Law to ask if we could join forces together and begin this institute. It would have never happened were it not for the incredible support of the Marsiglia family, because the institute is named after Nancy Marsiglia, who was in our original class at Madeline's house. She loved this study of the Constitution, and she wanted to see this Constitution class grow so that everybody would have the same opportunity that we had. I'm pleased to say that we now have graduated our 8th cohort, and we are on to our 9th cohort. It is my hope that everyone participating today who will hear from individuals who, like myself, have taken this course, will listen to just what it means to be empowered with the knowledge and to be part of what we've just launched this year, the Nancy M. Marsiglia Institute of Justice Alumni Association. We want to take that knowledge and that commitment, and we want to make sure that this now helps us in the United Way's efforts to build a strong, long-term pipeline for our policy and advocacy work. So with that, Mary, I hope I've given you a good introduction, and we can go on to the next item on the program.
That is perfect. Thank you so much, Charmaine. All right. So with that, we're going to jump into our panel conversation. So Michelle Dennick, who is the Director of Events and Investor Relations at United Way SELA, is going to be our moderator, and she also happens to be a Distinguished Fellow of the Institute. So Michelle, I will let you take it away and introduce our panel.
Thank you, Mary. So as Mary said, I'm the Director of Events and Investor Relations, which oversees Women United. So I have the pleasure of working with over 150 women in a giving circle to give grants out to support women and children in our community. So with that, our panelists are Martha Lemoyne, who is the curriculum instructor for the Marsiglia Institute. Hi, Martha. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
Maria Hewitt, the Administrator, Fund Development and Community Relations at the Junior League of New Orleans. Thanks for joining us, Maria.
Of course.
And we have Ronnie Sloan, the President of the Sloan Group.
Hello, everyone.
Ronnie, thanks for joining us. So with that, we're just going to jump in with some questions. I think, Martha, let's start with the basics and talk about the class format. What can people expect each week?
First off, I'd like to say thank you so much to everybody, and it's so great to be here. When I hear Charmaine talk about how this all began, I don't think I ever would have realized how important it has become to so many people, because, you know, I think all of you know from different classes, people who have taken part in it, we consistently say this is the most important time to be learning the Constitution, and with each semester, it seems to be more and more meaningful. And so I'll explain a little bit about where the idea began. I taught constitutional law for, I think it's been 45 years, which is pretty scary, and got involved with an organization called the Center for Civic Education out of Calabasas, California. And they, instigated or instituted a program teaching seniors in high school how to really learn the Constitution in a way that they could be involved in civil discourse. And at the end of the semester-long course, gather together in Washington, D.C., with each state having a representative and taking part in simulated congressional hearings. And so I always thought it was a phenomenal program, always loved doing it. I judged in DC, and thought about, wouldn't this be great if we could offer this to people who really, we walk around listening to people talk about it's an unconstitutional or that's not in the Constitution, but most people don't even really know what it is. And so many people today say they weren't really taught. And the opportunity to do it now is phenomenal. And so what the course involves is a 12-week program. It's based on the We the People book from the Center for Civic Education. Everyone has a book and a binder that the Marsiglia Institution puts together. And we meet on Thursday nights. We go through, my job is the hardest one because I've got to get everybody through. My goal is that everyone at one point in their life is going to read through the entire Constitution, so that you can't say that I didn't drag you through every single word. And so the first hour of the course each week is basically just my getting us through. The first unit is on ideology and the historical basis of the Constitution. And then we move on about how the framers created it. Then the American constitutional system itself. We do all three branches of government, the roles of the three branches. The Bill of Rights is one of the most engaging parts of it. And then the challenges of what the Constitution means. And I think most people come in fairly intimidated. I think you can probably all speak to that. But I think that we have enough material to make it easy for people to, we do a lot online. We are in conjunction. We also work with the National Constitution Center. And so the course every week, the first hour of the course is my lecturing, or I hate the term lecturing, but trying to get through what the Constitution literally says. And the second hour of each course, we are so fortunate to have incredible speakers. We have been so lucky. We've got, Senator Landrieu, just Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, Higginson, Professor Bill Quigley from Loyola. We have people from all over the country, Chris Riano, who runs the Center for Civic Education. And so every week, after I finish my pushing through the information, we have guest speakers, and they're generally, Clancy Dubose does the First Amendment every year. Yeah, I think everybody really enjoys that almost the most with Scott Sternberg, and Raphael Casimir from UNO, who's an amazing professor concerning civil rights. So we really, really are fortunate to have so many people involved in making it more than just learning what the 7 articles say and the amendments say, but having people to come in and make it real. And so, I can't tell you how, someone asked me today, what is the most important thing that's come out of this course? And I think it's been the camaraderie of everyone who's taken it, and the relationships, even when we did it virtually, that have been formed between people who care. And every single week, probably in every single class, we always were amazed at how it seemed like whatever we were studying, something about it was happening. There have been so many changes concerning, interpretation of the Constitution in the last 4 years that it's been really an amazing time to be studying it. I mean, all the talk now, about the court system and originalism, and, Ronnie and I were just talking again about whether or not the Supreme Court justices should be limited. I mean, there's so much going on now. And it seems like every semester, whatever is happening is one of the things that we spend the most time on. And so I just think it's so important for people to care enough to learn. And the course offers that. And the discourse is amazing. I mean, the class lasts 2 hours, but every single week we go over because people really want to continue the discourse. And as I said, to me, what means the most is the camaraderie that has developed and the people who have gone on to do incredible things with what they've learned. I'm always here to help. We do a whole lot. I've really become kind of much better at technology. We have podcasts, and, you know, I think it's just an opportunity for people to really, when they talk about issues, to understand what it's all about. And the civil discourse has been incredible. And I'm just really, you know, hoping that we can continue to do this for as long as possible. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Martha. Yes, I completely agree with you. I think the course is amazing, and I'd love to hear from some of the alumni. Maria or Ronnie, what did you most enjoy about the Institute?
Maria?
Thanks, Ronnie. I think for me, it was watching the light bulb go on over people's heads about certain things where they saw its relevance to things both large and small, right? So as you said, it just by chance, we would always have it, some practical application of it would come up. It was really kind of strange almost. We were like wondering, it was kind of freaky. But I think, you know, it was, as you said, you sort of took us through the theory of the basis of each article and then the, you know, the different rights and everything. But then we had the practicum, right, where we sort of tore it apart. And I think for me, it was for people to really start to appreciate a term that I had first heard as a poli-sci major at Loyola, which was the Constitution is a living, breathing document. Yeah. And so every generation will have its interpretation and how they work that document. We've seen such a big swing in a very short period of time, 50 years considering, you know, especially as it concerns Roe v. Wade, about people's interpretation of that and the judge's interpretation of that. So for me, it was just sort of, as people start diving through this and they see that the Constitution has this capacity to sort of change without really changing, I think, and seeing the light bulbs kind of go on over their heads was really sort of remarkable to me.
I would echo Maria's thoughts. I wrote down a few things. The big book, I like the big book. I'm a guy that I don't mind seeing it. I don't mind seeing slides or whatever, but yeah, that's a big book. The big book and the safe space. We had, you know, a diverse group of people, diverse, when we think about a spectrum, people all along the spectrum, if you will, and people found it comfortable to share, to speak from their lived experiences, the knowledgeable speakers. Martha already gave the format, if you will. The format was great, but I was always amazed, as Maria said, that we would get an article to check out or something like that, and it was current events, if you will. And we were going through that section, or it was coming up pretty soon, but we spent time acknowledging what was transpiring every week. So it was really, really good. And the format was just excellent.
I definitely feel like when big items come up in the news, I'm like, I wish I could be a fly in the room right now at the Marsiglia Institute, because I would love to hear the discussion about it. It's just the timeliness of the Institute. It's just the Constitution applies to everything. That's just what it comes down to, right? So it's pretty amazing. But yeah, especially with some of the most recent developments, I wish I just had that login just to check it out. But okay, going back, what would you say, Maria, to someone that is intimidated by the idea of studying the U.S. Constitution?
So I am not an easily intimidatable person, but I will say, at first when we were starting the introduction to the room, and I'm hearing from executive directors and I'm hearing from vice presidents, and you know, all of it, I'm like, you know, up until recently I was just a housewife hanging out with my triplets, and what am I doing in this class? However, I think when you internalize that the Constitution belongs to each one of us individually, and Martha provides a very safe space for us to have conversations where you can, without fear of being labeled as a, you know, whack job or any of these other things to sort of come in and express your viewpoint on how you process the Constitution, because each of us are going to process what's in there very differently. And so the beauty of it, as Ronnie spoke of, the diversity of experience that comes into the room. Michelle, you remember we had a woman who had been convicted and had served time, and she was literally studying the Constitution so that she could understand the process by which she was in the legal system, so that she could have it never happen to herself again. And so we all sort of come in, and at first that's sort of a little unsettling, because you're like, oh my God, you know, I was just ironing clothes and you actually, you know, have this very diverse experience, but we're all looking at the same document and our interpretations of it are going to be very different. So, you know, it can seem intimidating, but I think at the same time, when you internalize it as something that is yours as an American, you kind of got to get over that, you know, intimidation, because there will be at some point an aspect of discussion that is very personal to you and which you feel very passionate about, and you will find yourself just sort of speaking up. But you kind of get a feel for the class, and there was never anybody ugly or anything else like that in the class. And like I said, Martha provides a very safe space for all of us to have civil discourse as its intention to be. So that's what I would say to the intimidation aspect.
Ronnie, anything you'd like to add?
Well, yeah, I'm similar. I'm not necessarily intimidated, but I did warn my cohort mates that my lens was going to be via the lens of equity. It's one of the sandboxes that I play in as an organization. We do organizational development and training and a lot of DEI type equity work. So that was my lens through the whole thing. I mean, I was 50 when I got my bachelor's degree, and then 15 years later, I'm doing the Marsiglia Institute, and I'm thinking, okay, I said I was never going to be studying again. You know, it's like, I'm not reading any books, and then we get this big book, and I'm one of the ones that I got to go through it and follow Martha. So it was okay for me because I do, you know, training and development. So it was just the format was really good for me. Martha is a gem, but the Constitution is misunderstood, Doc. So I just wanted to make sure that I understood some things. By the way, as a high school senior, I was in Louisiana Boys State, where we did the national party and whatever party. We got to live on LSU's campus for a week or whatever it was. And then years ago, I remembered that as chairman of the education committee for the Jefferson Chamber, we used to raise money for the high schools in Jefferson Parish to do the We the People competition. So it was just another way for me to grab information. I enjoy learning. It's a learning environment. So that's how I looked at it. The intimidating thing was, I'm wondering how many people actually read some of that stuff, or they were just so in tune with Martha, they didn't read anything, and I'm reading word for word, and I'm feeling bad when I'm behind, so I gotta scan a couple of pages. So it was interesting, and it's not overwhelming. It's just that you know, I'm an old guy.
Oh, Ronnie, you're not. I agree with you though on the book, the materials that are provided. If you do feel intimidated, you can read ahead. I mean, that's always an option, and you can prepare more. I think if you feel that, you know, that's the type of person you are. And I'm with you, Ronnie. I read ahead, and that is an impressive book. I kept it. It's on my bookshelf. That's how much I enjoyed it. So moving on, let's get to the next question. I guess we kind of talked about there's no typical, you know, Marsiglia Institute participant. Maria, I think we even had a former House rep or was it a senator or something in our class as well?
I think so. Yeah, we did. I mean, it was a very diverse, you know, group of people, really drawn from all walks of life, all different experiences, some really, you know, I almost wanted to, I wish we had to meet it virtually But I almost wish we had had the opportunity to meet in person, because that's one of those things where you're walking out of classroom and be like, so what brought you here? And so, because you want to dive down deeper, is like, you know, I mean, I knew why I was there. But I think, yeah, that diversity, we did have a really, really broad cross section.
Yeah. Michelle, I forgot to say this when I was talking just a minute ago. And I was thinking when Ronnie was talking about intimidation, one of the most important parts of the course, and obviously the highlight of the ending of the course, is the simulated congressional hearings that we do. And I didn't really talk about that enough when I was describing the course. At the end, halfway through the course, I randomly pull names and divide the class up into 6 groups. 6 groups based on the 6 units in the book that they keep talking about. And I want to point out too that we've also got a binder that I put together with a lot of current events issues that makes that a lot, I think, a lot more interesting. And so it's the binders is really important too. But what we do at the end of the course is what the National Constitution Center has always done. We divide up into 6 groups, and it's randomly done about halfway through the course. And each one of the 6 groups picks one of the units from the We the People book and decides on a question that they want to research. They're amazingly broad questions with sub-questions concerning anything that we've studied throughout the year. The questions come from the National Constitution Center, and people are always terrified when I tell them about it, and they think, oh my God, I can never do that. But it has been phenomenal. What it involves is each of the groups working together, and on the final night at graduation, they, you know, have worked together. They've done all the work on the research on the questions, which are in the binder. And we meet at Loyola Law School, and Judge Higginson and Judge Fallon and Judge Tiffany Chase are the judges. They come in their robes, and every unit comes down, and they're asked a question which they've prepared and work together as a group. And then the judges follow up with questions, just like congressional simulated hearings. And so when I tell people about doing this, and I'm worried about people that are listening to this and thinking, oh my God, that sounds, no, I want everybody to tell them it sounds really terrifying, but it's an incredible, incredible experience. And you know, I've had people come in and say, I don't think I can do this, and just leave and say, I didn't want it to end. I didn't want it to end. And the beauty of that too is people working together, picking a subject that they want to work together on, and you know, having the judges, all 3 of those judges have judged every class. And every time we finish, they say, that's the best class ever. I mean, it's just like, it means so much to them. And it really is a great way to end the course. And so, you know, I really have been so proud. I mean, it's been really emotional to see the work that everybody's willing to put into it. And, you know, the discourse is the most important thing, because there are people in each of these units that don't even agree with one another, but they've worked together, formulated a question, and it's fine that they can disagree with one another in front of judges. And so I didn't point that out, and maybe a couple of you want to say, maybe at first it scared you to death, but what your experience was like.
Totally scared me to death.
And how was it that night?
It totally scared me to death. I'm not going to lie. I mean, the way that it was presented, but I will say it was probably one of the most fun things that I've done in recent memory. I think when you remove the pressure of like a grade, right? Because we all remember our group projects when we were in high school, and it was like, oh my gosh, he's not doing this and she's not doing this and blah, 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 and I need the grade and so forth. But we're afforded so few learning opportunities as adults with other adults in a no pressure situation. And it may seem like it's pressure with having 3 judges, but they're not there to tear us to pieces. They're there to sort of just provoke questions, that, and it's not even like they're taking notes or, you know, like, well, you were wrong on this and let me confront you on this. They're really just sort of pushing us to make sure that we are questioning in our own brains that the opinions that we're putting forth are truly based on what it is that we were studying, right? So it's not meant to be a gotcha.
Yeah.
It's meant to be like a, hey, you know, let me, maybe did you think of this, or let me ask you this, or whatever. So when I first heard about it, I was like, oh dear God, you know, this is so, and how am I going to manage this or whatever? But it allowed you to get to know your classmates in a better way, also, and sort of in a more intimate way that's not afforded, because the 2 hours are really jam-packed. I mean, it is from start to finish, it's information. So, but I am one of those people that was like, oh no, I was terrified, but it all turned out beautifully well, and I enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah. And also, I want to say that we provide videos for members of the cohort to watch leading up to it, to see what it's like. So you don't go in there not knowing what the experience is going to be like. And I have not had anyone say anything other than it was one of the most exhilarating, rewarding experiences they've ever had. So, yeah.
No, those robes are intimidating.
They are.
Just joking. I'm joking.
Judge Higginson's intimidating. He does take notes.
Yes, he does. And he'll come up with some follow-up questions real quickly. They all do. But I remember our group, I was so fortunate. The two people that were assigned with me in our group, I knew them. And so we planned the time. So we didn't mind getting together to study, let's say to break it up and then to come back together, to put the pieces and parts together, to edit our big document, if you will. And so it was a great experience, but it was team building. It was team building, and Shelby and I still talk about it. We see each other at different functions and things, but the whole idea was, for us, it's you get to hone in on something. And when I think about, we had habeas corpus and the writ, and the big writ, as sometimes folks will call it, and not even thinking about the things such as the view of security versus liberty, and thinking about how the military uses it, or how it's used by the military for detainees and things like. We never could, I think in some of our regular conversations, we don't necessarily connect it back to that, which is important. So I thought it was great. It was like, probably if you think about it, I always get amazed by this, but when a restaurant has a trio coming in to play, to play some music, that trio may not be people that always have played together, but they come in that night, I don't know, talk about songs that they know together. I often wonder if there's a playlist that they all know. But then you get the bass and the drummer and the piano player, and the music's great. And that's how I felt about it that night and I think we were maybe the first one. So it was over with, and then we sat back and watched everybody else. So if you got anybody listening, try to go first.
Well, I think
the amazing thing is, I'm going to say this, is when the groups are divided and they look into the units and choose questions. I remember everybody being real nervous about, well, what if everybody wants the same question? It's amazing in that it never happens. Everybody, each group does what they feel like they're passionate about. So yeah, it's a great experience.
And the judges want us to succeed. So I think that's pretty present from the beginning. And I was very intimidated going in, and I just didn't necessarily speak that much, I think, in our presentation, but my other teammates, we had like five people, I think, Ronnie, in our groups, to where because we were all online, so it was like a bigger group. Some people weren't even in the state, I think. But it was definitely team building, as you said, and we got together on like Tuesday nights, I think, and discussed and studied and things like that. So it's I think most continued education programs have that team building aspect, and that's really what I think I take away from a lot of these experiences, is those closer relationships that you've had those tough conversations with, because you have to work through it as a team. So,
Yeah.
I guess moving on to the next question, how, Maria and Ronnie, how have you used what you learned in the Institute in your life or at work?
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Well, I'm going to say professionally and socially is how I would probably categorize it. Those types of conversations. Again, that whole equity thing, and Martha talked a little bit about how we, we get a little chance to apply it to today, if you will. So, when I hear people talking about, well, you know what, we can use gun rights. People talk about they parachute in on that one sentence, not knowing that the sentence before it is extremely important to the one sentence. And I've had on numerous occasions people, in their conversations, and I'll just calmly say, hey, but that wasn't the original intent. Okay. And that's what Martha would always talk to us about. It's not exactly what they meant. Okay. And understanding that whole living document thing. So in our conversations, it gives me a chance to speak truth. And also, I remember there was a quote or something in one of our documents, Federalist 51, number 51. Martha would know exactly what it is, but I'd have to look it up. But the way it laid out how it was designed and the fact that it's not quite, I don't think they said the living document type thing, but that government of the people has to govern the people, but the people have to be in the, we got to have the three branches. And so sometimes folks in their conversations professionally and socially or personally, they tend to forget some things. And this just put it fresh on my mind so that I was able to use it. And I use it a lot in equity talks.
Great.
Maria, how do you use it in your life?
Well, one of the things that I think really opened my eyes as we were sort of going through this was realizing that my children had not actually taken civics in high school. So civics, when I was in high school back in the dark ages, was a full year course. And it was part of our American history. And then I think it went to a semester, and then I think it went to a quarter. And now I think it's largely absent from a lot of high school curriculums, which is astounding to me, because that's really where you sort of get the idea of a civil discourse, context mattering, that's not right, being important in terms of discussion. I'm like losing my ability to speak English. And so you sort of, now when I have conversations with people, because I also started, again, I was a poli-sci major and I studied the Constitution as part of that. And so I kept hearing people probably in the last 5 or 6, 7 years go, well, the Constitution this, and the Constitution says, and the Constitution, and I'm like, did something change? Like, did something radically happen to the Constitution I remember? Because I don't really remember any of this. So in my life, I just kind of look at, if they say something, I'll kind of push back and sort of do that Mr. Khan moment of like, have you really read it? Because you read it, I don't think it means what you think it means. And so that sort of has influenced just in terms of how I interact with other people. I think in terms of work, it has certainly made me more of an advocate for the education of the Constitution, right? We should have it be part of all of our children's curriculum, our curriculum as adults. But it certainly informs my advocacy work as I work with different organizations about utilizing this. And I speak as the daughter of immigrants, a truly unique system that we have in the United States. Good, bad, ugly, beautiful. It is probably one of the most unique governmental documents that exist in the world. And using that system for the creation of things that I feel passionately about. And if you're an advocate, you need to know how the Constitution works, because it's really sort of like the headwaters for the Mississippi River. From the Constitution, everything flows. And so the more you understand that, the more everything else seems to fall into place and make sense. So that's just what I sort of tell people as they ask about, like, why is this class important? Once you understand this, everything else just sort of dominoes in effect. And so it really is unique, and it really just sort of exposes the wonder that is our form of government to a lot of people. So that's my little stance on that.
Thanks.
Well, thanks, Maria. I guess my last question for y'all, and Ronnie, I'm going to start with you. And in a social situation, what is one of those little surprising like nuggets that you learn that you'll throw out when you're just about, when you're in a social situation? I have a couple myself that I love that I learned. So do you have any of those?
Not really. Well, I mean, when I'm in a social situation, I tend to try to listen more than I talk. Okay, because I that whole civil discourse thing, I think, starts with listening. So for me, it's listening to what they have to say, and if I can shed some light, again, here's the nugget that they have and people have held on to because of whether it's social media, news trends, whatever it may be, to broaden that perspective. So I just say that we should not. We should be mindful of our conversation if we don't know enough to include a deliberative dialogue. And dialogue is a conversation between folks. So that's what, because what I hear a lot is civil discourse. So bringing it back into frame is what's important to me. But I do like throwing out there recently the gun rights and what folks are saying. I start smiling when people just say just the one sentence and forget about the whole context of what was going on. I do that also with the fact that it's that whole living document thing. I enjoy saying to people that, they did the best they could. They created a document that they knew at that point in time wasn't actually in black and white, and that over time there would be here's a document that we can use over time. And somebody may come back and say, yeah, but it's been a very long time. I understand. However, if we just take it as is and look at the concepts that are in it, and then use those as the baseline for anything that we do moving forward, we do have a baseline. We do have a foundation by which to move things forward. So I'm always talking about it in that vein. Michelle, thank you.
Maria, do you have any surprising things you learned that you like to trot out on occasion?
Every class there was something I walked away from that I would immediately turn off and then look at my husband and be like, do you know what I learned today? And so, being the Jesuit grad that he is, I was always happy to sort of like, hey, you're not the only smart person in this family. I learned this about the Constitution today. Yeah. So no, every class had a sort of an aha moment that I took away from it. So, to me, the Constitution was always just this very interesting thing. So I'm fascinated by it and its different iterations over time without it actually changing in content. So every day was surprising for me.
I loved how Judge Higginson was talking about the different ways that different judges make, they interpret the Constitution, and I kind of compare it to how people, the different interpretations of how people, read the Bible. Is it word for word? Are they applying modern times to it? I think that was one of my biggest takeaways. I think because we're all reading the same words, but how are they interpreting those words?
Yeah.
Well, and I think especially with the recent confirmations, and by recent I mean like in the last year, when they would say, well, that person's a constitutionalist, and I'm like,
yep. And we
then
actually
I'm
know
like
what that
grabbing
is.
my phone and going, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So, but having taken the class, that it provides a broader context for what, for my understanding of that. And so without me having to sort of be, face deep into some serious legal books or whatever. So it really did provide sort of like context for those sort of things. So it helps having taken it to understand what that means.
Or I'll think to myself, like, how do I know that? Well, it's the course, it was through the course, let's be honest. But no, it was an amazing, and I think one of our guests was actually the author of the book, We the People. And I think that maybe, Martha, you brought him on to help ease our anxieties about the project. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
He's great.
he was very impressive. And
Chris, yeah.
And then, but all I have to say is do not Google videos of other projects, because these high schoolers are the top of like the heap. Like, they are literally all stars. I mean, we were just like, take it down like a couple notches, and then there we are. So
maybe search for middle-aged We the People. That's and see what you get. That might be a more appropriate search term than We the People competition.
these children, I mean, not the children, these high schoolers, these young adults are so impressive. So, I mean, this course was done beautifully, Martha and Charmaine. Congratulations. And thank you for letting us be a part of this. And I guess we're going to open up some Q&A. If any of our guests have questions, please go ahead and take yourself off mute, and we will direct the question to the appropriate person.
Or you can drop it in the chat. Either way,
We'll drop it in the chat. Thanks,
Yep.
Mary. Open the chat.
May I say one more thing? I think,
Of course.
I think what I'm hearing tonight is so heartwarming, because you guys, I think, realize how much this document is a framework, and how much it changes, and how much it's evolved, and that what we want to do through this course is that when people look at what's happening now, they can look back at, Ronnie was talking about these, 55 men who really had no idea. This is a framework. It's the shortest constitution in the world, and it's the longest lasting constitution in the world. And so it's the changing nature of it that we see every day, the interpretations we've seen in the last few weeks. And I think that's what makes the course so great. And I've heard that from all of you, and it makes me feel really good.
Well, we couldn't do it without you, Martha. This course is because of you, is what it is because of you. But it looks like we don't have any questions in the chat box, and nobody took themselves off mute. So I guess we answered every question there was. Great job, everyone. And Mary, do you want to reiterate the timeline?
Yeah. So I'm about to put the website link in the chat. So that is where you can go to get more information, where you can go to actually apply. So that is in there. And then if you have any questions, there's also contact information on that page if you want to follow up later, and we'll be happy to answer those. With that, Charmaine, do you want to close us out? Any closing thoughts?
Well, the only thing I would say is that the power under the Constitution will always be in the people. We have a participatory form of government. As citizens of this great country, we have a fundamental responsibility, in my opinion, to be not only participants in this great democracy, in this great republic, we have to continue to evolve and educate ourselves. And Ronnie, I will end with actually the Federalist number 51. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. In framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place, oblige it to control itself. I just have to tell you, this was one of the most transformative programs I have ever participated in. And fortunately for me, my professional career, both in the United States Senate and having graduated another course that was offered at Loyola. I just have to say, you're all right. Martha is superb at being able to bring this to the level of every single individual in that class, to make them comfortable and to allow them to feel like it's a safe space. But I am telling you, please join us, because once you complete this course, you then become a distinguished fellow, and we are not going to allow the education that you have obtained to just be that. We are going to engage you in the exciting work of policy and advocacy, and we're going to do what we did with our alumni just this year. We took them to the Louisiana Supreme Court, heard from our Chief Justice, and we are in the process of planning for a remarkable trip to Washington, D.C., where we will not only be meeting with the White House, but we will be engaging you as alumni in phenomenal opportunities to meet with individuals from all over. I say, please, if you have not registered, get to our website and register tonight. We want you, we need you, and better yet, you're going to just be thrilled that you did it.
And the men, that quote says it all. And I think I probably said it too many times during the course, but you can't. I mean, it's James Madison saying, if people were perfect, we wouldn't need any of this. And it's all about our, looking out for everybody else and living in a society, that more importantly, we have to govern ourselves. And you can't govern yourself unless unless you have knowledge. And that's what's so important about this, is knowing. So if anybody has any questions, and wants to reach out to me, Mary, that's fine. I don't mind anyone emailing me or giving me a call. I hope people are not intimidated. It really is a great experience. We haven't, had anybody leave or freak out or not want to do the final competition. So thank you all so much for being here.
Hey,
And
Martha.
look, don't let the cost of this program be the reason you don't apply. We do have scholarships available. And so if you're in need of a partial scholarship to be able to enroll in this class, please just let us know. We're happy to work with you.
Hey, I just wanted to say, so I talked about the emails Martha would send.
Oh, God.
Federalist 51 came on October 14th, a Thursday, at 4:02 p.m. And that was the first thing in there, important quote for tonight.
Yeah.
So she was setting us up.
Yeah, I do drive people crazy. I mean, get ready for me, to email you, and I'm still sending things out. But
That's
yeah,
right.
I'll send a quote
Thank
out.
you.
I'll say, think about this, and then we'll talk about it. So I can't believe you still have it. Yeah, everyone needs to know that quote. So.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you to all of our panelists. This was such a great discussion. And I think it was very helpful. So
great.
Thank you. Appreciate you. And we appreciate everyone who attended tonight. You'll have that website. If you have any questions, please, we are here. Obviously, these people would love to talk to you and are very passionate about this. So thank you and have a great night, everyone.
Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all so much.
Thank you.